Over the last few years, we've covered multiple efforts by the city of Lexington to increase options for bike riders in town. And so Michael is asking, do all electric bikes have the same rights to ride in the bike lane as regular manual bikes? The reason I ask is that many of them go as fast and have similar abilities of motorcycles. Well, here's Victor Puente with the answer to that good question.
Well, if a vehicle is going as fast as a motorcycle, then it might be considered an electric motorcycle, which would fall under the same regulations as gas-powered ones. But if you're talking about e-bikes that have pedals, then Kentucky law considers them the same as manual bicycles. The nonprofit People for Bikes says that means they aren't subject to the registration, licensing, or insurance requirements that apply to motor vehicles. According to the Department of Transportation, a bicycle is a vehicle and you're a driver. When you ride in the street, obey all traffic signs, signals, and lane markings. That includes any local ordinances. For example, in Lexington, you can't ride a bicycle on a sidewalk within the business district downtown unless you're law enforcement. So that would also apply to e-bikes. Now, some states have classifications for e-bikes in 3 different tiers, depending on how fast they go, but Kentucky is not one of them. If you have a good question, just email us. Goodquestion@WKYT.com. I'll see you on WKYT Mornings.